I guess I'll be taking up the reins real quick here. I have one of the other Magical Girl series. We covered Nier helped cover one of the really good ones this season, Magilumiere, Kabuski Gaisha Magilumiere, also known as Magilumiere Magical Girls Incorporated. And mine, on the other hand, is Acro Trip. So Acro Trip is a manga original by Sato Yone. This is her first work. Um, in I guess as a manga artist. They got an anime adaptation this season by Voil Studios. So they've done a couple of other more works here and there, helping in supporting roles with stuff like key animation. They're a little bit more of an upcoming smaller studio. This is their first main production work as of this recording. I believe they have another one coming in 2025. But yeah, this is their first main, like, we are the main production studio. We are the main contractors here. Obviously, they're getting help from a couple of other, subcontractors and the like, but this is their stuff. So yeah, the staff is a very interesting staff. This is a super ragtag band of people. They come from various places. They don't actually have any real connections, as far as I know, before this. They're pretty much all collected from everywhere. Usually, what happens is like um, a director will be usually prolific and have their hands in like a bunch of other places before coming to like a random studio and like setting up their team, setting up shop, or they'll be like a core part of that beginning studio, right? So like usually a director, if it's there with Studio Voil, they'll have they'll have been a director from that place before for like all their other projects, right? Or like an episode director or something like that, right? Or subcontracted an episode director or subcontracted unit director, stuff like that. This is not that case. Not only is director, I think, pretty much new with Foil. I don't think they've worked with them before, but they also all the other kind of staff members are all from different places. They collected from different places, and it's not like the director and the series composition slash script person is part of like a previous team or anything like that. It's very interesting. The director himself, Kotake Ayumu this is his first main directorial work. Does have a lot of experience as an episode director and unit director in other works, but this is his first ever main directorial, he's running the show kind of work. The rest of the staff, again, no real like connections in terms of like different series and stuff like that to speak of. So this is just like ragtag band of people from all over the place. Their experiences range from super prolific veterans. For instance, having Kamura Toshie as like character designer, he's done stuff everywhere. To kind of up and comers, we have some people who don't have as much experience, such as like Kawasaki Miela as art director. They've done um, some work and stuff like in betweens and like key animation works, but not as full art director work. So it's a very interesting group of people. In terms of the voice acting staff, we have sort of three main characters here. We headed by I don't want to say flavor of the month, but currently pretty hot and trending younger voice actors and actresses. We have Minase Inori. If you guys have seen any anime, like on anime per year in the past, I want to say 5+ years, 5 to 10 years, you will probably know Minase Inori, right? Especially if you know anything about, say, ReZero, because she plays Ren in that fucking series. She does the magical girl in the series, Berry Blossom. She actually does a little bit of like a stronger head voice and like a sort of like older kind of like voice that she usually has in her regular voice, because she has a very like wind, full kind of breathy, like like lighter voice as a regular voice. But she definitely uses like a stronger voice here, which is very interesting. It kind of almost masks her regular inflections. We have Itomiku. Again, you guys should know this if you guys have seen like any series in the past like 10 years. Doing as Date Chizuko, who is sort of the main protagonist of this story, just like a regular schoolgirl, kind of chronicling what's happening. And we have Shimazaki Nobunaga. Again, you guys should know who that is. He's done He's done a lot of, protagonist and supporting roles in the past X years as and he does the villain role in this one, Chroma. And in this one he does slightly like lighter voice than usual. It's like a very younger, like, oh, intelligent. I'm like Ozymandias in like Watchmen kind of voice. It's similar to that of like a Kakihara Tetsuya doing like Jin Kisaragi in Blaze Blue, or like Kato Masayuki doing like the smart aleck villain voice. It's a very lighter voice. One that I'm not kind of used to hearing from Shimazaki Nobunaga, but it's very interesting how Minase and Shimazaki both have these different inflections for this series. They're buffet by supported by a kind of generally veteran crowd of who's taking up these like supporting cast roles. Some are up and coming. For instance, Hanai Miharu, who has done some roles in stuff like Adama's Cinderella Girls, but sure, her general experience isn't as long as some of these other veterans, and some other very prolific voices also in this cast. Again, the two most notable I would say probably would be Morikubo Shotaro as well as Koyasu Takehito. But yeah, it's like the supporting cast is composed of a very kind of generally again veteran crowd here. We also have what is it, the sort of not Cube role, but it's like the mascot, kind of small chibi animal mascot that helps like the magical girl out, and they also speak. That mascot role is taken up by the voiced by Kaoni Shikengo, who actually does Gunha, Sugita Gunha in Index, the guy who's like super like energetic and go get him, and he's just like likes to like randomly punch things and stuff like that. So he's voiced by that, so that's a very interesting pairing. Going over the opening and ending. Opening is Fregum sung by Minase Inori. Overall, the visual opening, it's a nice kind of simplistic storyboarding. It kind of focuses on the comedic flow of a standard variant of introducing the cast and sort of base foreshadowing, right? So obviously foreshadowing of the story, introducing the cast members, but they focus on doing it in very comedic ways, just like having people pop up all over the screen, doing like non secateurs, like like things are like sad, dark foreshadowing is happening in the middle of it. Somebody bursts in and it's like, "Oh, look, do you want some food?" or stuff like that. So like very like a lot of comedic cuts even in the opening itself. Um, Obviously, the opening itself doesn't look super expensive. Again, it's not some UFO table Demon Slayer battle scene kind of animation level, but it gets the job done pretty decently. The song itself is a very standard, slower pace, I want to say, a J-pop anime song compared to a lot of openings. Relative, quite low BPM relative to what is standard now. I would say is probably at least 130, 140, 130 BPM plus for a lot of openings. The composition itself does fit Minase Inori's kind of lighter, higher vocals quite well, and does elevate I want to say the quality of the opening a bit, even if the rest of it is relatively average in comparison. But it does fit it very well, so it's quite nice. Um, the ending itself is called "Reversible Baby" by Kanoe Rana. So Kanoe Rana is a recently really kind of popping young female vocalist. She has previously sung opening endings for Tonikawa, Helk, Inspector, Yorokura. A lot of these like series that have been pretty popular recently. She does an excellent vocal. You can hear the full throat, just like chest voice, vibrato, just boom, just banging on. The visual ending, there's not much to see with a storyboard and visuals. The song itself is a pretty nice, relatively upbeat kind of Anna song. It's actually higher paced and almost more opening like than the opening itself. Quite heavy on the brass, but again, the female vocals of Kana Irana do carry the song, and it's quite good. So you should at least check, I think, the ending out. It's quite decent. On the overall audio visuals of the series, the BGM is nondescript, the OST is whatever. I would say the in terms of the visuals, the keyframes for the visuals are okay, and the overall character designs are set up okay. But there's an obvious kind of level of lack of in between frames, a lot of lack of quality in terms of like the battle scenes and just like um kind of repeated animations. uh a little bit tight on budget in terms of stuff like shading, palette tones, stuff like that, color design. um it ends up being somewhat reminiscent of almost early 2000s anime or even like ONAs in terms of that sort of quality, which is a little bit unfortunate. I would say there is a very, very, very specific part of this anime where I believe 99.99 of the in-between frames and the anime budget went to, and that is the one transformation scene of of the Magical Girl. So I believe it's like in episode 2 or episode 3, she goes through a transformation scene. And this transformation scene is pretty much full on Sailor Moon. It's like yeah, it's like exactly Sailor Moon transformation scene. But that transformation scene has more quality and in between frames than like the entire rest of the season of this anime series. Which is based, yes, but also a very interesting decision to be sure. So um you know where the priorities are for this series. But yeah, that was sort of it for the audio visuals. I would say it's a little bit dragging on the series as a whole, which is a little bit unfortunate. But it is what it is. It gets the job done, but like barely. And one shouldn't have to notice that's like barely kind of scraping along, right? It should just be solid. But I feel like there could be some better stuff. But obviously, there again are probably very much budgetary constraints on this series. Going over to the general plot. So the idea is, you have this kind of regular, ordinary schoolgirl who's an otaku called Date Chizuko. Date, being a reference to probably to the famous samurai strategist Date Masamune, which will come into relevance later. So she gets chucked into a kind of a city in Niigata Prefecture, who there's not much to see in that city. It's like a small kind of whatever city, but they have this like local magical girl town hero, city hero called Berry Blossom. So she fights off the villain called Chroma kind of like every day, right? But and that's like these like battles and stuff like that are televised. It's like on social media in the city, and it's like she's become like this local hero and like mascot kind of thing. But the one issue is this Chroma villain guy sucks at doing villain stuff. He gets his ass beat. He just tries to run in and tries to like essentially just headbutt the villain. He has no idea what's going on. And he just gets owned by the magical girl each and every time. And it's just like boring. So because it's getting boring, she's kind of losing popularity and potentially losing interest. And Date Chisco is like, man, this is stupid because like the magical girl, she really loves this magical girl, Berry Blossom, but it kind of sucks that she's in this fight against this super mediocre villain, super shitty villain, and she's not blowing up on social media. She's not showing her cool side enough because this villain sucks. And so the villain kind of catches wind of that. She kind of overhears her and tries to lure Date Chizuko into becoming one of his generals, into becoming his tactician to plan out better ways to be a villain, right? So the way he like convinces this otaku girl Chizuko, who also really really likes Berry Blossom, the magical girl, is that hey, if you work with me and make me more powerful, then I'll be able to have more exciting fights against Berry Blossom and this magical girl. And by having more exciting fights against the magical girl that you love so much, you'll be able to kind of see her in all of her shining glory in these like exciting, you know, seat of your pants, just like almost like life threatening, just like super thrilling magical girl battles, and you'll be able to have fun too. So obviously, Chisco uh refuses initially because he she doesn't want to be a villain, right? She doesn't want to do bad things. But then as time goes on, like she kind of gets caught up in these matters and she meets up with more and more of the cast and wacky hijinks ensue is sort of the TLDR. So a lot of this is two things. One, it's like a very implicit meta series. So there's a lot of this talk where it's like self-referential, where it's like talking about the good parts, quote unquote, of watching magical girls, right? Like, why do you watch magical girls? Well, it's to watch the fight. Is it to why do you admire these magical girls, stuff like that. The villain himself actually also likes the magical girl, but he likes getting hit by the magical girl. He actually is outed to be like a masochist, right? Stuff like that. Uh, Magical girls can only use magical girl magic powers in the presence of the villain for some reason, right? And against just regular people, she can't use her magical girl powers. So stuff like that. That's a little bit more kind of like self-deprecating, self kind of like meta in terms of like the magic girl genre. There's a lot of that. Beyond that, it's almost entirely like 90% of the series is almost entirely comedy focused. So there is this undertone of, oh, this girl, this otaku girl is helping the villain, and the villain is fighting against the magical girl, and the magical girl is kind of, you know, getting used to fighting the villain and learning more about what the villain is all about and what this otaku girl is up to and stuff like that, right? But on top of that underlying current is just a jam packed full of just comedy focused stuff, and that seeps into the story as well, right? So you'll have stuff developments where they're fighting and the girl is maybe hatching a plan for the villain to use, right? It's like, hey, villain, why don't you try kidnapping XYZ and then threatening the magical girl with it? If you abduct somebody, you can use them as hostages to threaten the magical girl with. And so they try to carry out that plan, but stupid things happen where they get interfere, that kind of get in the way of their plan, right? And in the middle of it, the villain gets comedically foiled once again, and they just fly off into the distance, Team Rocket style or whatever, or they fail. So there's a lot of these like comedic foils. There's a lot of these um kind of shticks, kind of comedy pacings all the time, whether it's slapstick, whether it's manzai, whether it's non sequitur, stuff like that. Most of the comedy I would say is actually pretty decent. For instance, there's like scene where the villain is trying to teach the otaku girl how to use magic that she just got acquired for a little bit of time, and they're trying to get rid of this broom that's been jamming a door, like essentially like force push a broom, right? And the girl's like, okay, I don't freaking know how to use magic. What do you want me to do, even if I have these magic powers? And the guy's like, well, you just use like force to, force push that broom. And she's like, how do you do that? And he's like, I don't know, just like go, ugh, like just like grunt and just like try to like push the broom with your mind. And so there's like all these like random shticks and like hijinks and back and forth and manzai duo and like secateurs. And the comedy like setups and like the jokes are quite good. Um, One downside, however, of this story in specific is that while the comedic kind of structures and stuff like that are good, the overall development and pacing of the story, like the entire episode and like overall plot, right, is somewhat slow. So it'll be kind of going on this slow story and it'll be kind of trying to add in a lot of comedy bits in the middle. So the issue is you have the sense of this like very kind of slow, not very slow, but quite slow story. So even when the comedy lands, because of the pacing, you kind of feel that it's a bit mild. The series feels a bit mild at times, even though there is this constant comedy pacing going on. It's almost like it's almost like one of those old like Zebek or these older kind of series. I want to say something like um ladies versus butlers or
The youth
something
doesn't
like no.
understand that spiral.
Yeah, sorry. I'm dating myself. I just named like a
Yeah.
500-year-old series. Yeah. They don't even know Z-Meg is out now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
dude.
That's
Zebek is
true.
fucking
Dead,
prehistoric
yeah.
gamer type shit, man. Like,
Yeah, exactly. God damn, I feel so old. But it is a very it's not super slow, but it's slow enough so that you kind of feel, oh, there's like a lot of comedy stuff I'm laughing at. But for some reason it just feels like very mild and like very slow and like mild and drifting. Um so it's interesting. I'm not sure whether I would necessarily want it to be higher paced, but it is like a potential consideration. Overall, I think in terms of the story front, the general story front of how the character develops and how the premise is set up and stuff like that, um, it's quite a solid job. Visuals aside, obviously, the visuals do the work that they quote unquote need to do, but I do wish it would be a little bit better. And the character designs are solid enough to not be an eyesore and keep the anime going. The story itself, um, although it does have a slower pace, the balance of like screen time, right? The balance of screen time between the constant like comedy versus the undercurrent of the slow stream of like character development. For instance, like the characters becoming more friendly with each other, the magical girl becoming more aware of like what the cast is like, stuff like that, is done very well. The screen time balance is very, very good. Uh, the pacing goes on pretty steadily while the constant comedy shticks are still presented in a proper manner. The theme of it kind of being this like magical girls and like the villains and how the villains kind of eat to survive and like how the magical girls kind of survive in this modern world aims to kind of give this series a more serious tone initially, but ultimately comes out at the end as an anime that is both a pretty comfy romp, because again you have like the comedy shticks all the time, and it still avoids being just like one of those. Again, we talked about something like Komi-san or something, maybe something like even like a Nagatoro-san, right? Where it's just like you have this like one shtick throughout um all of the episodes of this like this girl has just like one shtick, blah blah, and it kind of avoids that by kind of continuing to steadily push the character development along, so it doesn't feel like we're in the same will they won't they situation over and over again. So again, very very good job on the storyboarding front, I would say, and just like a general writing out of the pacing and the throughout the anime. So I definitely thumbs up for that. And as I said before, the comedy is pretty solid as well, and it's not just like some awkward sequence of people overreacting to like, "Oh my god, you're flashing your panties in the bathroom." It's like it's actual properly built comedy. So again, uh, I the visuals and stuff like that aside, do think the overall story and so on is very solid setup. Um, in the end, overall, I would say the series is pretty good. And it also does trot on the path slightly less traveled, again with its like proper mix of this like character development and the comedy, while also while focusing also on the comedy, but having this like kind of interesting setup of like the girl helping out the villain, quote unquote defeat the magical girl, right? Or at least make it seem like a good fight. So I like that overall, but I think the more sort of basic nature of the visuals, and also the fact that I do like this sort of setup, but right now it is a little bit aimless, I think, in terms of where the character development eventually aims to go at the end of the 12 episode anime. Because at the end of the 12 episodes, some sort of conclusion needs to happen, right? Something needs to, like, there has to be beginning and the end. And they need to either meet up and kind of run off into the sunset, or the villain needs to go off, or the magical girl needs to do something. There needs to be a proper resolution at the end of the 12 episodes. So right now, I think it's a little bit aimless right now, which is kind of destructive for the series because again, the way the story is defined is not a complete episodic story. It's not one of those like teasing master Karakai Jules Takagi-san. It's not like a Komi-san. It's not like an Aharen-san kind of thing where you can just have the same episodic stuff one after the other. And at the end of the 12 episodes, they're like, oh, later on, we had in the future, we had more fun days at the club. That's not how it works because there is this constant character development. So there needs to be a beginning and there needs to be a proper ending resolution. So I think it kind of seeming aimless right now is not helping it. So that and the fact that again the visuals are relatively basic prevents the series from becoming a super kind of top-notch series. So ultimately, while it is a good series, and I do think it's solid, I will ultimately have to give this series a 7 out of 10. It's pretty solid. If you like Magical Girl stuff, and if you want to see a Magical Girl series this season that won't, disappoint you necessarily, I think you should check this out. I think it's quite nice. I don't think it's good as Magilumiere. Lumiere is a quite a good series. But I do think this is a nice series to watch as well if you like Magical Girl series, or if you're okay with Magical Girl series. I think this is an okay watch as well. So please do check this out. But yeah, that was all I had. Again, this was Acro Trip by Sato Yune, or original a manga original by Sato Yune. Anime produced by Voil Studios, alongside obviously their subcontractors. Again, I think it's pretty decent. So if you have the time, please do check it out.
Did you mention that Voil is like a brand new studio?
Yeah, Voil is relatively like small and new. Again, they have like done like supporting work, I believe, with a couple of stuff, but it's
Yeah.
like this is their first like main thing that they're doing, and they have another like main production studio work coming out in 2025, but that's down the road, I think, for them.